everyone. Welcome to Intuitive Insights. This is our brand new podcast, and I am SomRa Rika, E.T. Walken, Spiritual Awakening Teacher and Facilitator and Sound Channel. And I'm here today with my awesome stepdaughter, Rajay Ashley, who is an intuitive. And we're both intuitive, actually. And we have lots of cool stuff to share with you about how we came about to experience our abilities, how we help people, and what cool things there are to know about the intuitive realm, the etheric realm, that so many people don't realize that are affecting their lives, their health, their circumstances, and what you can do to improve that and get it more in alignment with your desires and goals. So, hello, Rajay.
Hey.
Welcome. So we've had a lot of fun in our work together, and I have been doing facilitating spiritual growth, awakening, healing since 1989. I've been on a conscious spiritual awakening journey since the mid 1980s, and really pretty much partially awakened my whole life. And I knew what I was here for right from the get-go, to help with the great awakening of humanity. And so I wanted to get together with Rajay today to talk about her awesome psychic intuitive abilities and how they came about and what they can do to assist you, what we can do to assist you on your own personal growth, spiritual growth, and awakening path. So, first of all, Rajay, I would love for you to tell us, how did you first discover that you had these abilities? Because you were pretty much born with them.
Right. So the very first thing that I remember was being about 2 years old, and I was giving my mom advice. And you would think getting advice from a 2-year-old, would kind of let you know something there. But I remember I would sit there and I could just feel like this light come over me. And I was just saying things. I had no idea what they were, just knew I was supposed to say them. So I would say them to her, and that's my earliest memory. But yeah, it's always been there. She's always told me about me telling her that I was seeing things. I had this person, that black man on the ceiling. That's the first person I remember interacting with. And yeah, after that.
And just to be clear, when you say black man on the ceiling, you mean like his whole body was a shadow, right? Was that
That's
right?
what it looked like to me, right?
Yeah. So, it was not about race. Yeah, it was just like this
Yeah,
color.
no,
Was,
yeah. To me, little kid is just a black man on the ceiling. That's just
okay.
And after that, I want to say when I was at the courthouse, actually, I saw this woman coming off this elevator, and I just saw a huge bright orange aura. And at first, it kind of scared me, and I was just like, "Whoa, what is this?" I didn't know what it was, and thankfully, I got to talk to you later and find out what it was. But yeah, and besides that, I've always seen spirits, ghosts, things like that, angels. Like I can remember that for as far back as I can remember.
That is so cool. And as I recall you telling the story, because I didn't know you when you were that young. Yeah, you asked people about what's that orange that you saw in that woman's aura. Like you asked your mother, and she didn't know. But as your abilities became more obvious, as you would say things to them, they were kind of like more of a what you say, staunch religious mindset, and kind of Southern, that whole everything's the devil, that's not straight out of the Bible, right?
Right, things that if you don't know it, then it's evil. The only thing that they did like was that I could see ghosts. They thought that was like a fun party trick, and I did not like them telling people about that because people back then, it didn't always get you the right kind of attention.
Yeah, I'm sure. And so and as I recall, they basically scared you into believing that your abilities were negative and discouraged you, right?
Yeah, anything besides seeing ghosts, anything else that I saw or felt was all bad. It was all bad. If it wasn't in the Bible, it was evil.
How did that affect you emotionally?
It kind of hurt because, it's not like I was doing anything purposely. It's just, it was me. It was a part of me. It's not something that I asked for. It was just there. So to be told something that's actually a gift was evil was pretty hurtful. But my mom more came around to it than anybody else did. She didn't completely, but more than the other people in my family for sure. But that caused me to try to shut everything down because I wanted to be normal. I just wanted to be normal. I didn't want to be a freak, because I saw things, heard things other people didn't see. So, yeah, I tried to shut it down for, I want to say, from like preteen years. That's when I started trying to shut it down more.
Yeah, that sounds about right because I met you when you were 9 years old after, around the time me and your dad married. And I knew right away. I could see the bright light that you are, this wonderful starseed soul, and had what struck me immediately was you had such a purity of heart. Like you had no ill will towards anybody or anything, and I just knew I wanted to help cultivate that in you. And so much of your gifts and your beauty and that purity was being overlooked in the other side of the family, which essentially you lived with most of the time. And when I came into your life and me and your father moved closer to where you lived, of course, you came and stayed with us almost every weekend. So we were able to help cultivate these abilities a little bit more. And one of the cool things I remember, I was like, I knew she could see auras. Let's help her develop that. And so when you were visiting us one time, you may recall me and your dad would sit in front of a white wall and have you look at our auras and tell us the colors. You remember that?
I do. I do.
Yeah. Did that feel weird or were you okay with that?
At first, it was weird just because I wasn't used to people being accepting of it. So it was different. And I think being that age, I'm like, oh no, what if I say something wrong? Like when y'all would purposely think a certain color or something to see if I could see it. I was just like, oh no, what if I get it wrong? And I was like, nope, push that all over your mind. What is it? And yeah.
I'm glad you did because yeah, I mean, as I recall, you got it right every time to the best of our ability. We didn't even see auras as consistently or as clearly as you did at the time. We were perceptive as healers and channels and whatnot, but you were so specific and accurate. It was very impressive. And one of the additional tests that really proved it that your dad did is that he's a channel of ascended masters and angels, and we you didn't know that at the time. And so he brought in one of the masters quietly. The master didn't say anything to see if you could tell the change in his aura, and you could. And you talked about the brightness that you were seeing, so that was super impressive. So
Yeah.
anyway, we knew you had the ability. Was there anything else you want to say about that?
No, I was just saying it would have been interesting to know back then, but yeah, I wasn't ready.
You weren't ready to know that your dad could suddenly change into somebody else or
Right,
appears that
right.
way. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. All right. So now let's talk a little bit about how your ability reawakened, because like you said, you worked hard to start suppressing it when you were preteen. And then you got into teenager stuff and that became a priority. And you weren't around us as much because we moved away again, as I recall. And so you would come and stay with us every summer and for several weeks. And we would try to introduce you to all kinds of new things, spiritual or just in general, and help broaden your spectrum and your scope of the world and do whatever we could to cultivate that. So that was really fun. And we did introduce you to channeling and some of the groups and so you got to know that experience. How did that feel?
Everybody would always ask me that after the group. They're like, "Oh, it's your dad. How do you feel?" And I was like, "Well, it's still him. It's just, it's cool. He has an ability that I didn't know existed, but also reminded me of me because I used to also have an ability that I didn't know existed. So it wasn't really too far fetched. I thought it was really cool. It was just
Yeah,
different.
different. Yeah, for sure. Different from what you experienced on the other side of
Right.
the family, right? Yeah.
100%.
And you always had a unique connection with your dad, right?
Hmm.
So it probably felt additionally validating to know that your dad had abilities like you, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely for sure.
And was just open about it, like it's all okay. And
Yeah,
people come to our groups, and you would see, hey, there's all these other people who are okay with it, right?
yeah, yeah. Very different from what I was used to.
Yeah. So we did everything we could to help open and cultivate those abilities, and you were just know that it's okay and it's safe, and but it wasn't until much later that your ability reawakened. So let's talk a little bit about that. And because that was quite a process. It was in, let's see, you were in your late 20s, I believe. And so this was around 2014. You started to have, we were having some health issues and like thyroid issues and uh, panic was coming, panic energy. You had two little children at the time, plus a stepdaughter that was a little older that was staying with you and was in total overwhelm, as a lot of moms are,
Yeah,
particularly since the your spouse would go away a lot and with his job and come back. So a lot of times you were alone. So I came to visit you. You were in upstate New York at the time. And while these things were happening, and at that time, by that time, I already had lots of training in helping people to clear phobias, traumas, all kinds of stuff like that. So I said, hey, I've got some techniques that could help you with this, particularly EFT, which those of you listening, if you don't know, that's tapping on certain meridian points on the body while you're talking about the pain or the emotions or the issue, whatever it is, and it helps clear it out of your system, and it also helps you become aware of more puzzle pieces as to why this is going on, so that you can resolve it. So you said sure, anything help.
right.
And yeah, so I took you through some of those processes, and I'll let you share what you want to about what you discovered.
I remember whenever we started our process and everything, like I was scared, but I was trying to be as open as possible because I wanted to heal as much as possible. And then I didn't expect like the major things to come up immediately. So it was some pretty major shocking things that I definitely had the body memory along with like the flashbacks and everything. It was a really difficult time, and it's for sure if you weren't there, I don't know what I would have done because no traditional therapy has ever really helped. Um, that stuff was sitting right underneath the surface and needed to come out. And if it wasn't for someone who had experience with stuff like that, held a space for me pretty much, for me to be able to see that and be open with it. So greatly, greatly appreciate that. Um, yeah, so that was a very difficult time. And I really feel like another thing that triggered all of that was being my kids being so little. Like when things had started happening in my life, having kids and them being at that age just started bringing up things for me. And it was difficult. I was 24 with a toddler, a newborn, and a 4-year-old because I got my stepdaughter as soon as I got to New York. So it was a crazy time. But we all survived.
Yes, thank goodness. Yes, and I'm so glad I was there for you. And it basically, you couldn't. A lot of people, they have to work at trying to get their memories to come up, but you eventually, as the door was open, you couldn't stop it. And
Right.
so yeah, so it was a very intensive time for well over a year, as I recall, helping you sometimes every day with the next flashback and the next memory, and helping you process that. So yeah, interestingly, in that process, actually fairly early on, this was still in 2014, as I recall, we did a trip. We took a trip to Virginia, to Petersburg, Virginia, because that's where your husband was taking some training at the time. And we had the kids with us and everything, as I recall. And we visited the battleground there because we were always interested in history, right? And so this is where the breakthrough battle was that ultimately ended the Civil War. And we visited the park there, and it's kind of funny in a way because we always forget that Oh, wherever we go to a historical place, ghosts find us. They know that we can hear them and perceive them. And unfortunately, sometimes they follow us. Now we're better at that now. We know how to stop that. And folks, if you experience that sort of thing, we'll talk more about ghosts in a future episode. But anyway, a couple followed me back. We were going back to New York. We were driving back to New York at the time. And at least one followed you, but you didn't know it at the time. And once we got to New York, it was like they were bugging me every night. And it turns out that they knew me during that battle, during the Civil War. And I had always known I'd been in the Civil War, but I'd never really explored it yet to that point. And I'd never been to all the Civil War places I'd visited, didn't feel like I'd been there. But this one was. And so they recognized me right away. And I went through a whole healing process that I may talk about in a future episode as well, because it's absolutely fascinating. But once I got home, I was telling you more about what I had discovered in that whole process. A tremendous healing occurred. And you also then you began to perceive the ghost that was with you, right? You remember that? It was hanging out in your house.
Yeah, hanging out in my house, and I was still in my trying to block things mode because like I only have room for so much. So I was like, nope, let's block this out. And that was causing me a lot more anxiety. So finally, when I was talking with you, I was like, okay, all right. You said you should probably try to talk to him. I said, all right, let's do it. Let's talk to him. And immediately my anxiety went down. Like, it's because I was fighting it so hard. I finally let go, just went with it, you know. It was a lot smoother. Yeah, and talked to him and got things worked out.
Yeah, because I could see him intuitively, and it was so interesting because how you describe. I mean, I saw his clothes, the strap he was wearing that was holding his, stuff, his canteen, and all of that, and I didn't tell you. I remember I didn't tell you. I remember seeing the color of his hair and all of that, his hat. And you described exactly the same thing. You saw exactly the same thing. And so that really clued me in. Hey, not only is my intuition here, accurate, but yours is as well. And I held space while you talked to him. I helped guide you through questions to ask him. He provided information you needed to know. And it turned out you had been at that battlefield as well back during the Civil War. And we discovered that we knew each other back then and all of that. So this whole really cool story unfolded. So, but anyway, I remember you saying something that just like my heart just went, oh, yay, which was knowing that you had this intuitive ability ever since I'd known you when you were young, and knowing that, oh, this is a part of her life path and her purpose, and knowing that the other side of the family kept trying to get you to suppress it. You had been trying to suppress it. You realized at the end of that conversation with that entity that you said something like, I guess you can't run from who you are. And it was like the first time you had really embraced it, right? Or at least started to. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So fast forwarding, we went through that year of intensive trauma clearing for you. And by January 2016, you were realizing, hey, maybe this is my purpose, in this life, and that I need to express this. So I started testing you. We were meeting every week, and I would have a list of questions of things I knew the answer to, and would ask you those questions. And it was absolutely astounding because you were accurate every single time. And you just had this innocence about you because you had no training in metaphysics. And I was like, I do have all this background. You really hardly knew anything about chakras or anything like that back then, right?
Right.
And yeah. And so I knew that purity was coming through. There was no influence of your intellect because you just didn't have that knowledge, as well as historical stuff. People I'd known, I'd been in past lives, I would ask you about, and you would provide incredible accuracy and more information than I even remembered or had recalled yet. So I was like, oh my gosh, this is important work. This is really helpful because it helped me pull puzzle pieces together for my own growth and healing. One of the most stunning ones was we were into it a few months of this testing, And I asked you, I knew I had been among the founding fathers of the United States of America. But I wasn't able to access that memory yet. I hadn't focused on it. Life's full. And when you're on a massive transformational, multidimensional process that I am all the time, I just hadn't focused on it yet. So I was like, let's see what you get about this. And so I told you that. And I said, do you see this? And so you did. And how Roger works, folks, is basically you ask a question. It needs to be a singular question. And the more specific, often the better. And she closes her eyes and focuses on the question. And then the answer comes forward, either visually, auditorially, or you feel it, or kind of a combination. Is that right?
Right.
Yeah.
A little bit of everything, just however it comes through.
Yeah. You just trust and open however it comes through. And so I asked you about that lifetime, and right away you saw him interacting with George Washington, and you said that that he was in the military and also a politician. And he was away from home a lot. So you provided kind of like these interesting personal details about him. I'm like, okay, cool. And then I'm starting to tap into that and starting to feel the memory of it. And I said, do you know his name? And you told me precisely his name. And we'd never done that before. We'd never like asked you questions to get names of past lives or anything like that. And so I Googled it right there on the spot. And it turns out this is someone who was essentially written away from history on purpose, because I, at that time, knew a lot of things about nefarious things that were going on with the government and other stuff as it was developing. And so that's a whole other story we may talk about at some point. But there it was. The proof was right there. And it said he was a military, man and a politician. So I was like, okay, this is incredible. I've worked with psychics before, but I've never worked with anyone who was that precise. And, sometimes you don't always get answers that clearly. We admit that sometimes things are vague, but I was the perfect person to test with because I was so open, right?
Mm-hmm.
I had no resistance.
The least resistant you are, the easier it is to get things.
Absolutely. I wasn't afraid of what I would find out because I'm super curious person and dedicated to the truth. I want to know the truth, even if it's different from what my mind has thought or believed all along. So that really opened the door, and your abilities could come forward significantly. And then it wasn't long after that when I decided to embark upon my own healing journey when it comes to abuse. I knew that I had some, like, I'd had flashes over the years of maybe being molested or something like that really young. A psychic had told me when I'd asked about it, 15 or 20 years earlier. And she said, yeah, I'm seeing under the age of 3. And I knew that she was seeing more, but she didn't give me the details. It was like her higher guidance was telling her it's not time. So I started asking you about these flashes, and you filled in, you saw them and you filled in puzzle pieces to the story. It's like, what exactly happened from start to finish? And it just absolutely blew me away because some of those details and words I had often heard in my head or thought when I was with some prior partners, relationship partners. And so I'm like, whoa, this is major. And there's some healing here that I need to delve deeper into this. So I started seeing a therapist, and I was working with the channeled masters through Duran, your dad, and my former husband at the time. We divorced several years prior, but still really great friends. And as I was doing that journey, I also worked with you pretty much every week as we were unraveling puzzle piece after puzzle piece after puzzle piece, and discovered this whole vast pocket of trauma that was buried in my unconscious. And that's a whole other story that was profound in my transformational journey, but it changed how I would forever work with my clients. And I realized a lot of my clients, we would get to a point and there would be like a wall, there would be a partition or a barrier And it's like, I thought, hey, we could probably progress faster if Roger and I teamed up, and worked together in sessions with people. And so we set that up and we began working with my clients. And you remember that, how cool that was?
Yeah, I do. It was really cool.
Yeah, you came to visit for like 2 weeks and we just set up a whole bunch of sessions, Zoom sessions. And after that, working with those clients was able to progress so much more quickly. And many of them continued to work with both of us as well as me privately to help them process through various traumas and other things that they needed to know about. And it was just amazing. And so we knew we needed to bring this to more people. And that's why we're here today talking about this, because those of you listening, if this is ringing some bells, if this is exciting you, and you feel like this is something you want to pursue, because we have a way for you to contact us and work with us. So click the link below, or stay to the end. We'll share a little bit more about this, because this is a part of our life purpose in helping people and contributing to the great awakening of humanity and planet Earth. And we discovered that so many people have important buried memories and events that they think have no ideas in there. People they don't even remember at all. But as we began the session, as the puzzle pieces start coming together, they start to remember that person sometimes, or it takes a little bit longer. Sometimes it's after the session. And we do our best to provide puzzle pieces that provide a background, like what does the house look like, or the location that this is happening? What are some of the features to help a person understand that you, Roger, are actually perceiving a real event? So we do our best to provide pieces that about folks, so that your mind can help understand that yes, this really did happen to me. Because at first it can feel like this doesn't feel like my life, right? This doesn't feel like me, because that's the way the psyche works. Whenever something traumatic happens, for the most part, the psyche will block it out of your memory. And there's actually a physiological mechanism that does that in the brain. And so a lot of times, if you don't remember much from your childhood, there's a good chance there's a lot of trauma there. There's a lot of difficult stuff there that's actually unresolved, that's needing resolving. Every health issue you have and every circumstantial issue you have has a source, has an origin back then of something unresolved. And so that's a lot of what we do, is help provide that so that you can get the resolution you're looking for and the healing you're looking for. And we also do healing right on the spot in the session if needed. We are able to talk to different aspects of your consciousness, because basically anytime there's a trauma or event, it gets walled off and it's actually in your field. And I call it like it's a video. It's like stuck in time. It's just playing there, and it's affecting your life every day, your choices, if you have addictions, any of those things. That's where those things are from. And so we help to bring those forward to the conscious mind from the unconscious, and have processes to move that energy through, because it can be difficult to feel those energies. We don't get into reliving them, but we do help people process that energy out of their body. I have tools and techniques to do that, as well as I provide further education in the process to help your mind understand this is actually common, and you're okay and you're safe. And then you're free. You're free of that forever. And the situations in your current life begin to change and improve once what we call it in EFT is they're like table legs holding up the tabletop. The tabletop is what you're aware of. The table legs are what you're unaware of. It's those traumas, it's beliefs, limiting beliefs, it's held emotions that need to be moved through and resolved. Is there anything you want to share about that, Roger?
So yeah, I do have something to say about that. It's always really interesting to watch people connect the dots and come to their own realizations, and it's awesome to help them be able to progress on their personal growth path and see them be happier. It's always, you got to go through some icky things sometimes to get to the bright rainbow on the other side. So it's always good to be able to help them through the whole process and then come out on the other side better.
Yes, that's what it's all about. So we are into personal growth and spiritual growth. So let's go ahead and just put it, just make it clear. You're not into psychic readings in the old way. You're here to help people with their personal growth. What do you want to share about that?
I love helping people with personal growth because obviously you helped me a lot with mine and it's made a world of difference. I'm a completely different person from who I was 10 years ago. It's a way to, make your life better. And I don't do psychic readings in the traditional sense just because those are fun, but it's more like a party trick. I'd rather do something that makes a difference, that's actually very helpful to someone. So now that I know that I have that ability to go in and see specific events that happened and talk to these aspects that are holding them back, I definitely prefer to use my abilities for that.
Yes. And a really important point here, too, is as we went through that year or so long intensive healing process of your own buried trauma, you lost a lot of excess weight that your body was carrying. Your thyroid got regulated because you were told at the time when your first panic attacks were happening, and I first offered you sessions to move that through, that you were going to be dependent on this medication for the rest of your life. And
Right.
I said, yeah. And I said, no, that may not necessarily be true. Let's find it out. And as you healed a lot of those traumas, and I also showed you supplements to take, you were doing that, specific essential oils you were using to help that transitional process. You weaned yourself off that medication. You
I
rock.
did. I
Yeah.
did.
Yeah. And and you got healthier, you began eating healthier and taking more care of yourself. And so, and in that process too was how your psychic intuitive abilities resurfaced, because a lot of that was actually traumatic to be told that your natural abilities were bad, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So as a lot of that healed and you were reclaiming more of yourself, then your abilities came forward. And folks, if that's something that interests you, if you want to awaken more of your intuitive and metaphysical abilities, that's what's waiting for you on the other side of a lot of healing this unconscious stuff that we can help you with. And one of the things I say about this work too is eliminate the guesswork. We help eliminate the guesswork and help you get right to the answers that you need. And that's where Roger's ability really comes in. I work more with on the soul level, multidimensional level, understanding more, what the soul's purpose and plan is in a lot of these things that come up, as well as helping people process them through. And I work on the chakras and the energy field and all that stuff. I have a lot of healing work background, energy work background. So we do that right on the spot. And we also provide you with tools and techniques you can use to help yourself afterwards, because we get those answers too. The key is, not the events themselves and not even the emotional energy. That's just a held energetic pattern that does need to move. But it's, what did you believe about yourself as a result of that event? And particularly before the age of 6, all of that provides the foundation, and your neurological brain development foundation as well, of who you are and what the world is, and how you relate to people. And so when we start healing those things and you start realizing, oh, that's a belief that I took on at 3 years old that isn't relevant anymore, because of that event, whatever that event was, we help you let that belief go. And that's really a lot where we see the changes happening. You can make new choices rather than be automatically compelled or driven by these beliefs you don't even know are back there. All right, folks. So we're going to wrap it up for today. And we definitely invite you back. We're going to be sharing a lot more. We'll be sharing our case studies, things we discovered and how it changed people's lives. We'll be sharing techniques that you can use for yourself. And so we welcome you to subscribe to this channel, Joyous Awakening. And we will have a playlist for our Intuitive Insights podcast. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.